Miss Mitchell had been teaching 5th grade for almost a decade. She was known for being strict, but also for starting every morning the same way. She'd walk into her classroom with a bright smile and say, "Good morning, class. I love you all." The children smiled back, but deep down, they knew her words weren't always true. Especially not when it came to Henry. Henry was different. His clothes were worn out, his shoes scuffed, his collar often stained. He rarely raised his hand in class, and most of the time he just stared out the window, lost in his own thoughts. Miss Mitchell grew impatient with him. She saw Henry as lazy, careless, and maybe even hopeless. Over time, her frustration hardened into dislike. She corrected him more harshly than the others. She picked on him when he didn't know an answer. And slowly, Henry's grades slipped further and further down. The harsh report. At mid-year, every teacher had to prepare a progress report for parents. When Miss Mitchell wrote Henry's, it was filled with criticism. Does not try, doesn't pay attention, shows no interest in learning. To her, it felt like a relief to finally put her disappointment into words. But before sending the letter home, the school required the headmaster to review it. The next day, Miss Mitchell was called into his office. "Miss Mitchell," the headmaster said gently, "I've read your report. You haven't written a single good word about Henry." She crossed her arms. "Sir, I wrote exactly what's true. There is nothing good to say." The headmaster sighed. After a pause, he handed her a thin stack of papers. "Then perhaps you should read this." A hidden story. The following morning, Miss Mitchell sat at her desk and noticed the stack left for her. They were Henry's old progress reports. Curious, she began to read. The 3rd grade report described Henry as bright, curious, and intelligent. He was called a natural leader who helped his classmates. Miss Mitchell frowned. That didn't sound like the Henry she knew. Then she read his 4th grade report, and her eyes filled with tears. It said, "Henry has become withdrawn. His mother has been diagnosed with cancer in its final stage. His father struggles to cope. Henry needs extra care and support." At the bottom, in the headmaster's handwriting, was a note. "Henry's mother passed away this year. We must do everything we can to keep the light in his life from going out." Miss Mitchell dropped the papers on her desk. A wave of guilt washed over her. All this time, she had judged Henry without ever asking what he was going through. She had been blind to his pain. A change of heart. That day, she walked into her classroom like always. But when she said, "I love you all," her voice trembled. This time, she meant it, especially when her eyes met Henry's. From then on, she made a choice. She would see Henry not as a problem, but as a child who needed love. She encouraged him, guided him with patience, and reminded him daily that he mattered. And slowly, something began to change. Henry started paying attention. He began to smile more. His grades improved. By the time the final exams came, Henry shocked everyone. He was the top student in the class. The farewell the school only went up to 5th grade, so a farewell ceremony was held for the graduating students. Each child brought a gift for Miss Mitchell. When it was Henry's turn, he walked up shyly with a small box, unwrapped and plain. Some children snickered. Miss Mitchell opened it carefully. Inside was a half-used bottle of perfume and a simple bracelet. Without hesitation, she slipped on the bracelet and sprayed a little perfume on her wrist. Henry stepped closer, his voice trembling. "Miss Mitchell, today you smell like my mom." Tears blurred her vision. She bent down, hugged him tightly, and whispered, "Henry, I pray you grow up to be a great man. And please, never forget that you'll always have an adopted mother in me." Years later, time passed. Miss Mitchell retired, but Henry never forgot her. He sent letters after every milestone: high school graduation, college acceptance, medical school. Each letter ended the same way. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." One spring morning, Long after she had stopped teaching, Miss Mitchell opened her mailbox to find a wedding invitation. Enclosed was a plane ticket. At the ceremony, Henry stood tall in his doctor's coat before changing into his wedding suit. He walked Miss Mitchell into the reception hall and proudly introduced her to everyone. "This," Henry said with tears in his eyes, "is the woman I call my mother." The room filled with applause. Miss Mitchell's cheeks were wet with tears as she embraced him. In that moment, she realized the truth. Yes, teachers teach lesson. But sometimes, the greatest lessons are about love, compassion, and second chances. The moral, the story of Henry and Miss Mitchell, reminds us that what we see on the surface rarely tells the whole story. Behind every quiet child, every struggling student, there may be battles we cannot see. When we choose kindness over judgment, we don't just change a grade, we can change a life. We can change a life. We can change a life.